One, two,
Welcome to the Clarinet Ninja Podcast. My name is Jay Hassler. As always, I'm doing my best to bring you the finest in clarinet information and entertainment. Today on the podcast, I'm speaking with Larry Guy. Larry Guy is a fantastic clarinet player. He's played on Broadway. He's played at the New York Philharmonic. He's played in the New York City Opera, the ballet, principal clarinet of the Joffrey Ballet. He's done it all. And even more important to this podcast and our conversation, he has put out a number of really, really fantastic books. One on embouchure, one on articulation. He's cataloged all the books that Daniel Bonade wrote in his life, and also put together a really wonderful sort of study guide of the Rose 32 Etudes. We talk about all those books. We talk about all things clarinet, and Larry shared some really wonderful secrets with us. Before we get into that, don't forget to like, subscribe, 5 stars, leave a review, do something to help me, if you would, get this information into the algorithm and out into the world. That would be really, really fantastic. And if you're an adult clarinet player looking to scale up your improvement, check out the Clarinet Ninja Dojo. Links for the books that Larry wrote, links to me are all going to be down in the description, the show notes. Check it all out. It's worth your time. And by the way, let me just put a little bit of a plug in here for my friend Cameron Hawes of Camco Publishing, who is the person that I'm going to direct you to get all of these wonderful books. No further ado, here's my conversation with Mr. Larry Guy. Larry, thanks for joining me here on the podcast.
Well, Jay, it's a pleasure to see you.
I was thinking back to the last time we saw each other was in Queens, and we played some pops show out there.
Yeah.
With some fancy nouveau hipster band, right?
Okay.
The Pink Martini, I think, was the name of the band.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay.
No, it was quite a while ago.
Yeah.
When I got started on this podcast, you were one of the people I wanted to talk to, and that is because of all the books that you have played, either entirely, they're your books, or books that you have edited. And I go to them a lot for material and for ways to talk about playing the clarinet. And you've always been inspirational to me in that way. But I feel like every once in a while I just run into another book that you've put out, and I'm always glad that I have.
Oh, thank you.
So as far as I know, the first two were the embouchure book and the articulation book. Can you talk to us about those?
I think articulation was a little bit later, but the embouchure book I think was first. I think you're right about that.
But these were things that you had put together basically as materials for your students that ended up working very nicely in a collection and a book.
Yeah.
And I guess, like, even more than just talking about the book, what I want to know is where your principles of embouchure came from, like what teachers, like the line of the history of clarinet playing. The span of your career is quite long, and like we played much different mouthpieces, and possibly people are going for a different sound now than early on in your career. Like what differences in embouchure and the style of, or that we go for as clarinet, maybe not you and me, but like what's changed, and has there been any implication about the embouchure that we should know about? That's a pretty big question.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Go ahead and talk about whatever you want, because I want to hear it.
Break it down a little bit.
Yeah.
The books started to happen because I was working with a student who was an adult, and he had played his entire life. His name was Julian Ander, and he actually was just about Dave Weber's age. So he was, when I first started working with him, he was in his 70s. He had retired. He'd been a very successful, he had a shop for photographers and sold cameras and that whole thing. And he was very successful, and he retired, and he had been playing his whole life, but he really wanted to focus on the clarinet in his retirement. And he was practicing 3 and 4 hours a day in his retirement. And I gave him a number of the things that I normally do with students. And he said, you have to write this down. He said, I haven't heard of these sort of things before. So he was really the person who persuaded me to write things down. And then it sort of grew from there, because a number of things I felt like I really wanted to get into and see if I could organize them, because organization of the material is maybe the hardest thing about writing a book, as you well know.
Yes.
And so I wanted to see if I could organize things well enough so that a student who never knew me and never took a lesson from me could open up the book and go through it step by step and hopefully get something out of it. Right. And the hardest book for that was the articulation book, because as you know, articulation is the most contentious thing probably among players and teachers, because we're talking about tonguing, and everybody's tongue is a different shape, and the inside of your mouth is a different shape, and your dental occlusion is all different, and your throat's different. And so it's very hard to get just an idea of how to articulate. Not, one size does not fit all, that kind of idea. You know what I mean? So the articulation book was the most difficult one to do. But all of the books I did along with my students. So I would give them ideas and give them exercises and see how it worked out. And then if it worked out well, I try to put it in the book, step by step that way. And one of the hardest things was the embouchure book, because I was working with students on embouchure, and I noticed that their embouchures were looking better and better. They were really looking like textbook embouchures, like looked great, but they didn't sound better. And sometimes they sounded worse. And I thought, why is that happening? Because they look so good. And I realized that they were making such a focus on their lips and the position of everything that they weren't blowing very well. So I realized that you really can't teach embouchure without teaching airflow and the way you use the air. And so that's why in the embouchure book, of all things, there's all kinds of breathing exercises and support exercises. Which
we got the book here?
There,
this one
that's articulation. But
this is articulation. Okay.
The embouchure book looks like this.
Okay. All right. There we go. Yeah. Okay.
And so it has a lot of things about breathing and blowing and that sort of thing, because an embouchure is just a sort of means whereby, but the air has to really be working. And if it doesn't, then the embouchure doesn't help.
Well, I mean, tell me if I'm hitting something that relates here. The embouchure really only functions to get the reed vibrating correctly and get it in our oral cavity set the way we want it, right? So there's things that are happening there, and so I think just going to what you said, having someone focus on what it looks like is not necessarily the same as having somebody focus on what the function, like what's the outcome of this.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, it seems like it's a very simple kind of job that the lips do, but actually it's more, as you know, it's more complex than that. And so it does take more work than you'd think to make things really start to happen, embouchure wise. And of course, there's all the interior stuff.
Right.
And that interior embouchure is so important. And yeah, so.
Did you ever learn double lipped when you were younger? Yeah. Is that how you started?
No. But I play double lip every day.
Yeah.
A little bit of some of it. My lips are relatively thin, and I've never been able to really get into it for performance. Right. But I think it's a great tonic. So I play double lip. I start out with double lip every day, and then I go to single lip from there. I actually worked with double lip with Dave Weber when I was a student at Oberlin many years ago. This was my undergraduate work. There was one of my colleagues there. Her name was Annie Lenore. I don't know if you ever met her. No. She was a very talented clarinetist and a real character. And she said, "You've got to go to New York with me at spring break, and we're going to take some lessons with Dave Weber." And she was actually quite a talented player, but she knew him from before.
Right.
So I did just that, stayed at the YMCA and took like a whole series of lessons over like a 4 or 5 day period. Then would go home for the rest of the break, and he would give me exercises to do for the next 3 or 4 months between times that I would see him again. And one of the things we did was double lip, and it was very difficult for me because, as I said, my lips were thin, and it was very hard. But of course, what it does is it strengthens the lips, and that's, I think, very, very important. And when we talk, if you ever want to get into biting, oh boy, there's a can of worms.
Yeah, it is.
But one of the things about biting is that the lips usually, and when the student is biting, the lips are usually very passive. Their strength hasn't been developed because they're using the jaw pressure to engage the reed on the mouthpiece. But at any rate, so Dave Weber was the first person who encouraged me to play double lip. And then many years later, and I had played it on and off, for years after working with Dave. Then many years later, I worked with Cal Opperman. And this was in mid-career because I went to him because I had a hand injury. And Paul Garment told me that the best person for any kind of injury was Opperman. And he was, but the first thing he says, we got to work on your embouchure. So he made me play double lip at all of my lessons. And by that time, it was not quite as foreign and difficult as it had been in undergraduate years, but it was a challenge because my lips are thin and they stay that way,
I started in fourth grade playing double lipped.
Oh,
And no one told me that was, well, I thought that's how you play the clarinet for probably about 3 years.
mm-hmm.
And no one ever said to me, "Oh, you're playing double lipped." No one ever said anything. Then finally one day somebody was talking about it. They were talking about putting your teeth on the mouthpiece, and I was like, "What?"
Huh?
Yeah. But then here's getting to this biting conversation. I'll just graze it right now.
Okay.
I figured out I was in my career. I was playing professionally.
Yeah.
I'm not going to highlight where this problem identified itself because that would still be embarrassing to me. But I realized my teeth weren't actually always in contact with the mouthpiece. Like I wasn't biting at all.
Yeah.
And it was causing some problems. Like in the altissimo, like on C sharp on the E flat clarinet or on
Mm-hmm.
E, the same note, right? Like I would squeak. There would be a little chirp, not a
Uh-huh.
full-on squeak, but a chirp, and I couldn't figure out where it was coming from.
Uh-huh.
And after about 8 months of changing mouthpieces, changing reeds, changing ligatures, I finally figured out, oh, hey, wait a minute. My teeth are not actually making contact with the mouthpiece, or just barely.
Mm-hmm.
I thought to myself, I guess I took the don't bite instruction too seriously.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it was also connected to me playing double lipped when I was a kid.
Oh, that's interesting. Very
Yeah.
interesting. Marcellus used to call it a purchase. You need a purchase on the mouthpiece, that kind of thing. And I think it is lips, but it's maybe not 100% lips. There is something about that teeth structure that helps too.
Yeah. So if you had to like do something ridiculous, like and give us the 5 most important things about your embouchure book, like what would you say?
The embouchure book, the five most important things.
No, or 10 or whatever you.
Wow.
Well, I mean, or let me ask the question a little bit differently. What do
Yeah.
you find is the most helpful and most frequent instruction that you give people with their embouchures?
Oh my gosh. Well, that's a difficult question because I do think that every embouchure is unique. And I think we all have to find the way. I mean, and only the individual can feel his or her lips as well as they need to make those final decisions. I'll give you one example. When I was working with Gigliotti, he talked about tucking the upper lip against the teeth and then pressing that massive lip down into the mouthpiece. And that was one of the most important things that he talked to me about. And that's in the embouchure book. So maybe that's one of the most important things. Because it begins to replicate double lip to some degree. Because it tends to allow the throat to open naturally and easily without being forced open. And it gives a lot of stability to the upper lip pressing down. And there are clarinetists, including I'm trying to think of a guy who used to play first in St. Louis. Anyway, there are people who feel that the upper lip is really more important than the lower lip when it comes to the embouchure. But one example I was going to tell you about the upper lip was that you know Andy Lamy, very fine player in town who plays in New Jersey Symphony. And we were talking a little bit about upper lip and the way we tuck it against the teeth and press it out. And he said, "Oh man, it's the easiest thing in the world. You just do this and do that, and it's done." And I didn't say this, but I meant to say, you've got very strong, thick lips. How nice for you. But it's not quite so easy if your lips are thinner. And Gigliotti, when he was teaching it to me, was very, very consistent and persistent, making sure that when I stood in front of this mirror at every lesson, that he saw absolutely no red of the upper lip. That if any red of my lip came through, it meant I wasn't tucking enough. And that was just my lips. There are other students that had much thicker lips. They would be able to tuck beautifully, but see a little bit of red. But for me, he couldn't see, he didn't want to see any red at all. And he was so persistent about that. And that's one of the things about teaching that I think is so important, that we become persistent about certain things that we know a student really needs. And they may hem and haw and they may wait around and they may do it halfway, but you have to sometimes be so persistent about making it really happen.
For me, in my own sort of teaching of myself and in teaching of others, so many of the things that feel natural or feel like this is how you play the clarinet are established before you've ever really thought about playing the clarinet very seriously. For me, with the double lip embouchure, that imprinted on me, this is what it feels like to play the clarinet.
Mm-hmm.
So changing that felt like I was no longer playing the clarinet. I didn't really know that that was so important to me, but
Yeah.
it was, right? It's interesting, like how we hold on to things that was a habit that was formed haphazardly.
Oh, oh yeah. I mean, I think sometimes the first time a student blows, they're what? They're in their fifth grade or something, and
Right.
they got a clarinet, they put it together, and the teacher says, "Now here's your reed. You put it on now blow," and they go, and they get nothing, 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 and then the teacher says, "Use a little more pressure on the reed," and there goes their jaw pressure, wham, and they get a sound, and they immediately remember that because it's like they had a victory.
Right.
They have a sound. And that sound came from usually jaw pressure because the jaw is so tremendously powerful and the lips are relatively very, very weak. But
Right.
in clarinet playing, we have to strengthen the weak muscles, the lips, and we have to let the jaw pressure forget about it, go to sleep and don't wake up, that kind of thing,
Right.
you
Right.
know? So it's counterintuitive. And I think much of clarinet playing is counterintuitive.
Now, a question I have for you that I've never asked anyone before, and I'm springing this on you. So I'm interested to know about this. Like the different length of a mouthpiece opening. Does that have any implication about somebody's embouchure and what they're doing, what a person might like or not like in terms of the how 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 long the facing is?
Yeah, right. It used to be the long facings were usually with relatively close tips, and
Right.
they went together.
Right.
Relatively 102 tip with a longer facing, and then the more wide open tip would have a tiny bit shorter facing. That's all been changed with some of the Van Doren models, but for many years that's what it was. And I always felt, I mean, this is just my personal response to it. I always felt that I felt the relative thickness of the tip much more, the relative openness of the tip much more than the length of the facing. Does that make sense? So
Yes.
there was something about the response of a 102 opening that was so much different between that and a 113 opening, shall we say.
Right.
And of course, you had to use a different reed as well. But that response was so different that I found myself focusing more on the tip of the mouthpiece and the opening of the tip than the length of it. Whereas length, I'm wondering, and this is just one of my, these old wives' tales you have that you carry around with you. But length, I thought, had more to do with the sound of the mouthpiece, that if they were longer vibrations, you get a different kind of quality of sound, sometimes more complexity because of the length of the mouthpiece. But whether that's an old wives' tale or not, I'm not quite sure.
Well, I'm all for it. I'm kind of searching very passively, but about if the resistance comes from the tip opening versus the resistance coming from the long facing versus the resistance coming from thick rails or from somewhere inside the mouthpiece, what is the actual practical difference in that the existence of that resistance?
Oh, well, I think it's a personal thing, don't you? In
I
other words,
get, yeah, yeah,
there
yeah.
are people who want a resistant setup and they feel that they need it.
Well, yes, but if that resistance comes from the tip opening, how is that different than it coming from the length of the facing or the width of the rails? Like, because it's it all, I guess, works as resistance, but that has it's changing how it's coming about. And why would somebody lean towards one cause of resistance versus another?
Good question. But we have all tried various mouthpieces that have exactly the same facing, supposedly.
Right.
Let's say a Van Doren M13 lyre. We've all played a few of those.
Yeah.
And they're supposed to have the same facing. They're supposed to have the same tip opening. The rails look identical, but some of them are resistant and some of them are not. And some just play better than others. Some just have better sounds than others. So that seems to me to indicate more of the interior of the mouthpiece than the rails or the tip. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we're playing mouthpieces that are supposed to be identical, and they are not identical, especially in resistance.
Right.
And so it's so very hard for me to quantify. Although I will say I will tell you one little story. It's so hard to quantify exactly what's exactly working about your mouthpiece or your reed or not. This is a lesson I had with Marcellus, and I thought it was really interesting. I went in, and what happened? This was when he was still in Cleveland, before he went, Chicago. And he'd say, "Oh, just go in there and warm up and play a few scales, and I'll be right back." So I played a few scales. And he came back in. He was listening out in the hall, which he always did. He wanted to know what things sounded like from a distance. And he came back and he said, I think you have a very good reed today. And I like that mouthpiece, and I think your clarinet is just fine. But there's something about that barrel. And I thought, how did you decide that there was a problem with my barrel from half a block away? You know what I'm saying?
Or even to pick it out up close. I mean, it's a very, very specific thing.
Let alone out in the hall someplace.
Right.
So he said, "Here, I want you to try this barrel that Hans Manig gave me." And it was indeed a fantastic, amazing barrel. What I didn't tell him was that the barrel I had was also from Hans Manig, but there were Manig barrels and then there were Manig barrels. And he got a great one. But anyway, so the idea of what is working and what is not is such a complex thing, don't you think?
Absolutely, yeah.
So the individual has to find his or her own way to be comfortable with that setup, and also to be able to like the sound at the same time, which is a tall order sometimes.
What is the longest you've ever played one mouthpiece?
Oh, gee. I have to say that I really did go through a few different mouthpieces in my time.
We all have. That's why it's
Haven't we all? Haven't we all? Mouthpiece madness, right? But I did have a mouthpiece that I loved. It was a Casper, and it was a Casper 16, which is normally quite open. And do you remember Everett Matson?
Oh, I never met him, but I know who he is. Yeah,
he was. He did mouthpiece refacing.
Right.
And he worked inside a little bit sometimes too. But he was a very, very nice man. And this was in the Navy Band. So it was many years ago, right after my undergraduate years. And there was another clarinetist who played in the concert band with us. His name was Rusty Mirasol. And Rusty said, "Oh, I just dropped this mouthpiece and I think I ruined it because all it will do is chirp." And it was a Casper 16. So I said, "Can I see it?" And sure enough, there were two big, big gouges on the one of the rails, left rail, I think. And I put on a reed and chirped all over the place. So everybody chirped on it. But I said, "Rusty, can I buy it from you?" Because Caspers, even in those days, were getting hard to find. I mean, they're not so easy to get. So can I buy it from him? He said, "Oh, just take it." So he gave it to me. And I took it to Matson. And I said, "Look at this. These rails are ruined." He said, "I think we can maybe do a little something with it." He didn't go inside the mouthpiece. He just refaced it. And I put that thing on, and it was a fantastic mouthpiece. It didn't last forever, but I was so happy to have it for a while. I tried not to tell Rusty what happened to his mouthpiece that he had given to me.
Well, I mean, somebody should tell Rusty if somebody offers you money for something, you just take it.
Yeah, I guess so. Right.
That's,
That's the lesson you have to learn from this one, right?
somebody offers you money, say yes, don't give it
Yeah.
away. Yeah.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right.
Come on, Rusty. Uh, Getting into the articulation book, like
Yeah.
this book was super helpful to me because
Oh, good.
articulation was probably the most remedial part of, I mean, I could function as a professional musician, but it was still like in my heart of hearts, the thing that I knew was the weakest part of my playing.
Uh-huh.
This book was very, very helpful to me.
Oh,
Yeah,
great. Thank you. Yeah.
it was huge, and so I'm wondering if you can talk to us about this idea that like we talk about tonguing and articulation like it should be the tip of our tongue to the tip of the reed, right?
Okay.
Which is I think in the abstract probably a really good idea, but I think a lot of people don't do it.
Yeah. Oh, no. Right, right.
Yeah,
And they have guilt, right? They're plagued by guilt. Okay, this is a great point that you're making. When you say tip of the tongue to the tip of the reed, you're talking about two different directives.
right.
One is to use the tip of the tongue, and the other is to put the tip of the tongue on the tip of the reed. Now, there are people who can do that effortlessly, but there are many of us who can't, and I'm one of the ones who never could. And the reason why I've figured out is that the length of my jaw from this place where you have the dog leg on your jaw to
Uh-huh.
the front, not the front of your chin, but where your teeth are.
Right.
This distance is short. I have a short distance here, but I have a long tongue. Now, this means that I was never able to get the tip of my tongue on the tip of the reed unless I felt like the the tongue was going backwards in a sort of an S shape in order to find the. Yeah,
Right.
forget about it. It was not possible, and I felt terrible about it for years. So when I was studying with Marcellus, I always had a list of things to ask him. He wanted me to bring in a question list, and I said tip of the tongue to the tip of the reed. I said I can use the tip of the tongue, but I can't put it on the tip of the reed. And he said, "Oh, I don't do that." And it was one of those moments of sartori, in the lesson, where years of feeling terrible and guilty about not being able to do tip of the tongue to the tip of the reed was all dispelled in a moment when I realized that a man who had some of the most beautiful articulation I've ever heard
Yes.
also tongued a little bit farther down on the reed. He used the tip of his tongue, but he tongued a little farther down on the reed because he had a long tongue and a short jaw, and he had a big overbite, as you know. So, so as far as articulation is concerned, it's really, I mean, it's a very nice directive, tip of the tongue to the tip of the reed, but oftentimes we have to adjust it based upon what the student is like, and what the mechanics are inside the mouth.
Well, I want to get your response to this. I've always felt like getting our tone right has to have the idea of where are we going to articulate? Where are we going to tongue? And it needs to be in the same place. Like our tongue needs to be in a place that is available for effective articulation
Mhm.
while we're playing our most beautiful sound. And
Yeah,
to not put those two ideas together can oftentimes lead people into a place where I mean, and what I'm thinking of mostly when I'm talking about this is my adult amateur students, my adult kind of enthusiast player. Like, how do we get them to the point that they can articulate and tongue in a way that's comfortable and effective without losing their sound? And so
okay.
I try and teach it together in a way that means that you're using your sound, your best sound when you're articulating, right? Because I mean,
Yeah,
that's what we all want to do, right?
right.
But my particular endeavor is to do this for people that are not children. They're able to think and understand the concept and the idea of it.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering if this idea has anything to do with anything that you've thought about or teach
Oh
or
yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah, we think about it all the time. Absolutely. So the goal is to be able to produce a legato sound that's very beautiful, and then from that legato sound to go into articulation, and not destroy your sound, not have your sound get less beautiful than it is when you're legato.
Right.
And to me, there are two things that happen. I'm sure there are more than that, but two things that happen that mitigate against keeping your most beautiful sound when you articulate. One is using a larger mass of tongue to touch the reed. I really believe in the tip of the tongue. And in this articulation book, we have the little, what do you call them? Coffee cup lids
Yes.
with that tiny little aperture there. So we put the coffee cup lid to your face, and you put your tongue right through it, and through the aperture on the cap. And what that does is that reminds you exactly where the tip of the tongue is. Because I found that with students, many of them don't really know where the tip of their tongue is, especially when they're thinking about 16 other things and they're playing the clarinet.
Right.
They forget. So that little exercise of using the coffee cup lid cap tends to really bring your awareness to the tip of the reed.
And I want to make sure for the people that are listening and not watching, you're talking about the kind that has the little rectangular hole already in it, not the kind that you peel up.
No, it's not exactly rectangular. It's like a little slot.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, it would be rectangular, but it's rounded at the edges.
Yeah, exactly. Rounded on the edges, exactly. And it's very small, and it just the tip of your tongue fits right into it.
Right.
And the edges are a little bit sharp, so the tongue feels that sharpness, and that focuses your attention on it. And the other thing that I think mitigates against your most beautiful sound when you articulate is closing your throat. And when a lot of people start to articulate, and you can hear it, it gets a sound like a little bit like this. They get that kind of quality into their sound. It's because when they're moving their tongue, they're closing their throat. And that's a very, very common thing. As a matter of fact, when I do articulation studies with students, like, Cal Opperman's chromatic runs that are articulated, I always say we start with a yawn, a very, very comfortable, easy yawn. And you're not forcing the back of the mouth open.
Right.
Just
you're making me yawn.
Yawning. Yeah. It's catching, isn't it? So you're just keeping that yawn. And then at the same time, you're working on the tip of the tongue. So you can get the coffee cup lid thing happening, and then you can get the yawn happening, and then you can try to put them together. But to me, those are the two big things that really can destroy the sound when you articulate.
Well, and the thing I like about this approach is it's not employing a great deal of thought or logic, right? I mean, it's all very logical, but it's tactile and natural, right?
And simple.
Yeah, right, absolutely. Right. I mean, it's things that you don't have to use brain power to employ.
Yeah, I completely feel that we should use as little brain power when we're playing as possible. But let's face it, we have enough things to occupy our minds.
Right.
We have to play with other people. We have to play in tune. We have to play with good rhythm. We have to get the right notes in the right place. It's a lot to do. And if I'm thinking, something that requires a lot of intellectual thought in order to make something happen from a technical point of view, forget about it. There's just not room in the brain to do that. At least not in my brain. Maybe.
No, I'm 100% on that. I definitely like to teach things that are things that people already know. You already know how to yawn. You already know what that feels like. And to go on instinct and intuition is far better than going on intellectual thought.
Oh yeah, but on the other hand, I think that the warm up is a great time to really get into the nitty gritty, picky things. So, and sometimes when you have a morning warm up, you know how it is. Sometimes you do a morning warm up, you think, oh my gosh, I'm too tired. I don't want to do this. Doesn't feel really great. And you still get into the nitty gritty, picky things. And then by the time the performance or the rehearsal happens, you're feeling really great, and you're not thinking of all those details because you've already taken care of it. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, I always think of a warm up as confirmation and a reinforcement of instinctual behavior.
Oh yeah. And yet you're still trying to polish a little bit those things. Each one of them, you're trying to make a little bit better than it was yesterday.
Yeah, but yeah, I was talking to my class earlier today, just a few minutes ago, about the warm up is a time to reinforce and get a little bit better, but you're not trying. The goal of a warm up isn't to try and get significantly better. It's to be in your best place to play today.
Hmm.
right? And make small changes, right?
And they add up.
Yeah, and to set yourself up for good practicing or a good performance.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
Exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
totally.
Um, excellent. Now, the next two books that I have, the 32 Etudes, the Rose Etudes, and the complete Daniel Bonade, are both books that are I've gotten within the past year and a half. I have so much appreciated having all of Daniel Bonade's stuff in one book
Hmm.
rather than several small books. And I also think that there's a way that this comes out a little bit more like I had the Clarinetist Compendium as a kid,
Hmm.
as like a sixth grader.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would look through it and I would try and read it, and I couldn't make heads or tails of any of it because it was all written so much like you know, from when it was, which is not, it was 1984 in Alaska, like
Yeah.
I'm studying this book, but I couldn't really quite figure it out. And so like I appreciated that I not only got that book, but all the other books in one. And I really, yeah, I just really appreciated having all this. And I like, how long does it take to put this together? Like, how long did this take? This is fantastic.
Oh, I don't know. I'm guessing a year and a half.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah, that's my guess. And they some of them were longer than others. The articulation book took a long time because it's the
right,
most complex book. And also organizing that material was a bigger a bigger deal than some other ones.
right,
Whereas, of course, with the complete Bonade, we had much of that material already.
right.
There's a story, and I'm not sure if this is true. The Bonade had a photographic memory, and much of the orchestra studies book was written out from memory.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yes. But there were at least 150, 200 things I had to change in it. I
Yeah.
mean, there were a lot, as you know, there were a lot of little mistakes. They were little mistakes, but I'm having a feeling that he really did write that book from memory, if you can believe it. He was quite a guy.
At any point you met him or you took lessons or
I never met him. He was
yeah.
before my time.
Okay.
But many of my teachers studied with him.
Right. Okay.
And he played in the Philadelphia Orchestra. And when I
Right.
studied with Gigliotti, um, we were doing Beethoven's Sixth, and Gigliotti said, "Oh, I have something to show you," and he brought out his part, the Philadelphia Orchestra part. Bonade was he was an artist, and he loved to do little sort of graffiti art, sort of kind of. And so the Beethoven Six would start with a tree and a branch, all written on the side of the page of the music. A tree and a branch, and a little bird on the branch of the tree, and the bird is singing and very happy. And by the second movement, the bird is lying down a little bit. Third movement, and so later on, for each movement, the bird is getting tireder and tireder and tireder. And finally, at the last movement, the bird is on the ground, like with X's on his eyes. And it was Bonade's comment about the fact that the Beethoven Sixth is a very demanding and tiring kind of piece to play, as we all know.
Right.
But anyway, so Bonade was really quite a guy. And I have one other story about him, although maybe I hope I'm not going too far afield. I talked to one of the things I talked to Mitchell Lurie about Daniel Bonade, and Mitchell Lurie was one of Bonade's favorite students. And I said, I heard a story about why Bonade was fired from the Philadelphia Orchestra. I believe he was actually fired once and then they rehired him back. But the first firing was, I said, I heard the story and I can't believe this is possible. That Bonade and Tabito, the principal oboist, were having a fight during a rehearsal. And Bonade, who always had a newspaper with him, and whenever he didn't have to play, was always reading the newspaper in the rehearsal, wadded up his newspaper and put it under Tabito's chair and lit it. I said, can you believe it, in a rehearsal? And this is why he got fired the first time. And I said to Mitchell Lurie, I said, would he be capable of that? And Mitchell Lurie said, oh, yes, he would be. So anyway, he was quite a character. I hope I'm not defaming him by telling those.
Well, no, I mean, I think that, I mean, anything we can do to add to the lore, whether it's true or not, I think is a good thing to do.
I heard it from two or three sources. That's why I asked Mitchell Lurie about it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so now I've got a lot of questions about the Rose
Yeah.
Etudes, because
Yeah.
like you have done something that, you know, I'm doing. I and I started this without seeing the book. Like in one of my in my sort of advanced class that we're doing in my online program, we're going through the Rose Etudes, and I'm creating basically what the same thing you've done. I mean, I put the Etude in Sibelius, and then I put my own stuff in it, and then I write reductions of it and practice techniques, and I go through and go, yeah, like I go through the harmony of what's going on to try and give a lot of stuff. But what's been fun for me is I'll do the whole process of putting my own dynamics in and saying what I think is important about it.
Mhm.
And oftentimes I've got a lot to do in my life, and I'm doing it as sort of what I do right before bed. And so I've got my computer, my laptop in, I'm doing all the stuff, and then this stays right next to my bed. And then when I get done, I think, okay, what did Larry say? I wonder if I got it. I wonder if I got it right.
Well, I would like to see your comments, and then I'm sure I would learn a lot from yours.
No, but it's been very fun to feel like I'm going through these with a friend. Like it's been really really wonderful for me, because like it's given me a chance to go through the etudes and far more in depth, because I'm building a program that I want to be durable for many, many years and provide
Mhm.
great information. So I'm doing my absolute best to create materials to help people learn the music, learn the clarinet, and really sort of, you know, come away with it with a lot of stuff. And you know, working with individual students, I would never be able to take that much time to
Mhm.
do that.
Mhm.
But you know, but to see what you've done, I was talking to Cameron Hawes about it, and we were just talking about how great it is to have the etude on one page and then the instructions on the like you don't have to, you know, flip the page, it's right there. It's
Yeah.
incredible. It's really fantastic. Talk to me about how this came about. This literally sits next to my bed. Like I look at it at night, you know, and I admire it.
Oh,
So
great. Thank you. Well, well, actually, I first of all I want to uh, do a shout out to Cameron, because Cameron was so specific about every aspect of the etudes themselves. And we, you know, there's like 6 or 7 different editions over the years. We went back as frequently as we could to Rose's first edition, and it's quite different from many of the subsequent editions. And the
well,
Carl Fisher edition that we all grew up with
right.
has numerous issues with it and problems with it. Um,
I want you to feel free, because if you don't answer it preemptively, it's my next question to talk about those different editions,
yeah.
how they came about, and just sort of fill in the what's actually Rose and what's not Rose.
Well, of course, it's all Fairlane, right?
Right. Yeah.
I
Of
mean,
course.
that's where it came from. It's all
Right.
Fairlane.
Yeah.
But there are, I think there may have been certain things. Again, I'm supposing this. I don't know, but my supposition is that there were a number of things that Rose sort of took for granted that he was going to teach each student, and he didn't necessarily have to put it all down in his copy of the Fairlane. No,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? So, for example, there are articulations that are in for part of the etude, but they're not. And but then when the music repeats itself at the end, it's an ABA section. Then the A section comes back, and the articulation, the staccato marks aren't there, and that sort of thing. And I think one of those things was Rose would say, "Yeah, of course this will be staccato, just like the beginning, you know, but it's not marked simile or anything like that." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I also think that Rose was very savvy about the use of the tongue in the articulation, the articulation etudes. And when he has, what is it, number 12, where it starts in D minor, you know that one? It's all, it's 16th notes, and it's all,
yeah. Yeah. Slur two.
yeah,
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
so I mean, my sense, and this is by teaching it to hundreds of people. was that the two slurs do were as legato as possible, so that when you get to the staccato notes, you are really playing them short, and you're making as much differentiation between those very very legato slurs and the staccato articulation. And I can't imagine that Rose would disagree with that, but who knows? I never met the man, but
Right.
you know, I think that he liked to push the envelope a little bit. The staccatos are short, the legatos are very very long. That kind of idea.
Right.
And so it's one of the ideas that I put in. I certainly tell all my students to do that, and I'm hoping I'm saying the right thing. But
Well, I mean, so much of it is really, I mean, I think kind of going back to what you're talking about with the embouchure, like, what does a student need? Like, what does a student need to learn from this? Because
mhm,
there are certain things that each etude lends itself to learning,
right.
but then you're dealing with the individual and what is it that's going to be most useful to them to get from it at that
Mhm.
particular point in time. I think I mean, that's what a skillful teacher does, and I know that's what you do,
Well,
right?
I try to,
Yeah,
but of course, I think there are themes,
right,
I mean,
for sure.
in
Yeah,
each one of the etudes,
right,
and it's important to maybe emphasize that to some degree with the student. This is what this is really about, what we're really going to get into here,
right, right.
that kind of
Sure,
thing.
sure. Yeah, and then that's the thing that makes these etudes so great is that they're so musically related to other things. Like the form that is so it's so clear and so skillfully realized in the music that it's a good way to show somebody about form. It's a good
Right.
way to talk about how things happen, the differences that you're going to make, and how this is related to, but not this exactly the same as when it comes back. You know, all those are really wonderful things. There's a lot of integrity to the etudes.
Mhm. Oh, definitely.
Yeah, and a lot of things that to point out in terms of, like I never heard of sonata allegro form until I was in college,
Hmm. Hmm.
and like to nobody ever talked to me about form at all, and these all have form
You're right. Right.
that is beautifully executed.
I think
And
so
yeah,
too.
yeah, it's fantastic. But in a backwards way, plugging my class, and I'm okay with that. That like I make videos of all the stuff,
Oh,
right?
great.
So like the thing for me is, I haven't worked on these etudes in a very, very long time, so I've got to get my clarinet out and practice them again. And
Hmm.
and like that's been part of what's been so fantastic for me in terms of your book and these etudes and what I'm trying to put out into the world in my class is that
Hmm.
it's really forced me to, as a grown up, look at these etudes. Because I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
I learned these when I was probably a little too young,
Hmm.
you
We all
know?
did. I think
Yeah,
we all
yeah,
did.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
But
yeah, so it's difficult because a lot of what I thought was that of a teenager.
mhm.
Like I used to play etude number 7 when people would come over to the house. My mom would say, "Hey, Jay, play the clarinet for so and so." Right? Yeah, I always hated that. So I'd always play
Me
etude number
too.
7. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was my piece.
Good. Well, going back to 12, for example, I think,
Yeah,
am I correct with this number? Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
the end of the first phrase of it is finally has articulation, but it's in
Right.
the upper register. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
And
I'll put it on the screen for
yeah,
the video. Yeah.
exactly. So what it's really saying is that first of all, you have to have your embouchure working well, your air working well, your tongue working well for all those slurs. Do you? Yeah, but you have to keep a lot for the very end, and you can't shift all around. You can't get lazy,
Right.
because at the end of that phrase, you've got to be able to do an articulation thing. It's going up to high C sharp E D, and it's
Right.
got to be clean and clear. And it won't be if you get a little bit lazy while you're doing all those slurs. Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
the lessons are built in. The teacher can sort of emphasize them so the student knows what to expect, but they're really built into the etudes, which makes them, I think, invaluable. Really.
Every time I get into one of them, and like you would have no way of knowing this, I broke my foot in April.
Ouch.
It was not good. And the doctor told me that I couldn't go back to work. I don't know, you probably don't know this. I also teach middle school music and band.
Uh-huh.
So I didn't go back to work. And so I missed the end of the year. And
Ew.
what I did was did a lot of my work on these etudes. And it's
Mhm.
just like the amount of respect I have for these etudes and the work that you've done with them in this book. It's just overwhelming because I sat with them for a long time because I couldn't walk. I didn't walk for a long time. So I would sit in this very chair and just practice the clarinet and get on Sibelius and write things down,
Uh-huh.
and do a bunch of stuff. And
Yeah.
there's so much there to work
Yeah.
with.
Oh yeah.
It is amazing then to look at all the other great etudes that we have in comparison and
Hmm.
think, yeah, they're not as good.
Hmm.
There's a lot of great etudes, yeah, yeah, undeniably. But
Yeah.
then you get to this stuff, and that's super smart.
Yeah. Yeah. Very smart. He's very smart. Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally agree. I'm sorry you broke your foot, but it was probably great to have all that extra time for a while.
I tried to make the most of it, but the first couple weeks were great. But then at a certain point, I had a knee scooter, so I was like scootering around my
Oh
house. I
yeah.
wasn't supposed to leave my house.
Oh
I had
gee.
to order all my groceries. It became a little bit of it became. I felt like I was having the pandemic all over again, but by
Oh,
myself.
oh gosh. Ouch.
So that
But,
that wasn't. I did get a lot done.
yeah,
Got a lot done, but it didn't feel that good.
didn't feel good.
Yeah.
Yes.
You probably are just learning about my program. I've got a whole online thing, the Clarinet Ninja.
Hmm.
I doubt you that you probably really spent a lot of time checking it out, and that's totally fine. But I guess what I'm saying is that what you wouldn't know is that the the primary audience I'm talking to are adults, and I'm
Hmm.
curious to know, like, if you have any, like, I know you've worked with a lot of adults, and the person that inspired their early books was an adult. Like,
Right.
what do you find? Like, I find that adults can learn the clarinet very effectively and very, very quickly,
Uh-huh.
much more than kids.
Uh-huh.
But there seems to be an idea that learning an instrument as an adult is difficult, and I think that maybe from a small motor function standpoint, that might be true.
Hmm.
But in so many other ways, I find that it's not true.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you have any ideas about things that adults can leverage in their adultness to learn the clarinet in a way that you couldn't teach a kid.
Oh, well, I totally agree with you about the efficiency that adults can learn. And sometimes adults in their 50s, 60s, 70s can learn very well. Um, and I think also they have a certain kind of, oftentimes, a certain kind of attitude towards the instrument that they really want to do this. And there's that, very straightforward kind of idea of how they're going to work. And of course, by the time we're adults, we've learned how to work,
Right. Yeah.
and we've learned how to not waste time, supposedly or hopefully. So I have felt a lot of gratification in teaching adults, more so than I thought when I first started teaching them, because I thought, the old idea, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, you can teach old dogs lots of new tricks. Um, and um, and I have always enjoyed teaching adults if they're really into it, and they wouldn't be taking lessons from me unless they're really
Yeah.
into it. You know what I mean?
I discovered during the pandemic and working with adults, like I want to build this into a community of adult players.
Mm-hmm.
And Michelle Anderson has done that very successfully. My friend Josh Gill has done that. He's currently doing that, and I find that like I found so much inspiration from people that wanted to play the clarinet that
Mm-hmm.
it was the thing that my career had sort of beaten out of me was the joy of playing the clarinet.
Yeah, all you have to do is be perfect every night.
Yeah, yeah,
That's all.
so like being around people that just simply love to play the clarinet, it's pretty great.
Hmm.
It's still my favorite group of people, and I always walk away from the sessions inspired and just overjoyed with how much progress people are making. The whole thing is really a rewarding thing, and if not for the horrible pandemic, I don't think I would have ever
Yeah.
come to the place that I am now to do it. And so I try and remember that because that was a tough few years.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Especially in the New York area. That was just awful.
You were gone by then, right?
I was gone.
Yeah.
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 And it was bad enough here. We shut down, and I'm in New Mexico now, and we shut down everything. And I still remember. I don't know if you ever had this feeling when everything was shut down that I would just get cabin fever of the worst sort that just drove me crazy. And in the middle of it, Well, I live in Albuquerque, and Santa Fe is about 60 miles away. In the middle of it, I heard that there was a coffee shop open in Santa Fe. So I drove my car 120 miles round trip to get a cup of coffee in Santa Fe, just just to get out of the house. That's how bad it was.
Well, I had a 3-year-old. My daughter was 3 when the pandemic started.
Oh, gee.
So like there was, we had to get out of the house. We would walk down. I live in Riverdale, and there's a monument a few blocks from my house, and there's space to run around it. And we would call it the Eiffel Tower,
Yeah.
and then we would go to the Eiffel Tower every afternoon about 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
It's crazy living in an apartment in New York with a 3-year-old.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy. So.
Very hard. Yeah.
Hey, Larry, thanks so much for doing this. I mean, it's really amazing to be able to get all of your wisdom and your voice in all of this. It's really fantastic. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Jay. I had a great time. It was my pleasure. Totally.
All right.
All right.
Thanks a lot, man.
Okay. Take
All right.
care. All right. Bye.
Thank you, Larry Guy, for all of that information and the wonderful conversation. It's fantastic to reconnect with a friend who has moved away and is willing to come on and share a lifetime of secrets. Maybe not secrets, but a lifetime of helpful suggestions and ways to get better at the clarinet. That comes from a lifetime of playing clarinet, teaching clarinet, and knowing just what to do and how to do it. We'll see you next time on the Clarinet Ninja Podcast.